Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader, reading books for you. Today I will be reading Book 3 from the Henry and Kathleen series of children's books, Little London Pirates, by Taryn Jahme. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It was a hot summer's day during the school holidays, and the children had been playing for quite some time. "Fight!" shouted Henry to Kathleen in his deep pirate voice, waving his mulberry bush stick in his hand and running as fast as he could after her. Kathleen laughed and laughed as Henry ran after her, trying to tickle her on the backs of her legs with the large green, tattered leaves at the end of the long stick he was pretending was a pirate sword. How funny he was, chasing after her when she knew she was going to win anyway. Why did she have to always play his silly old games just to entertain him? Why? Because secretly Kathleen knew that Henry always thought he was a real pirate. She laughed and laughed. Henry hid his right hand inside his sleeve, pretending to have no arm and holding onto the stick, fantasizing that he had a hook for a hand. "My name is Captain Stick for a Hand," he kept saying in a deep voice, trying to scare Kathleen. What a funny moment it was. They both ran around and around Kensington Gardens playground, which was in Hyde Park, where there was the most monstrous ship for the children to play on. The ship was made of neatly carved wooden slabs. Children were able to jump and run on it and dive into the sand below. It was not painful at all to land in the sand, layered all around the ship. The children were also able to behave as badly as they wanted to and enjoy the surroundings of the play area with all the wonderful swings, slides, and hideaway places between the bushes, walls, and rocks. Because of all the wonderful places, they ran around and around, Kathleen trying to escape from Henry with every twist and turn. So many children were in the playground enjoying their time on their family day out, joking and laughing, playing on the swings and rope ladders the park provided for them. Kathleen was finally caught by Henry. They started creating a new game by jumping in and out of the ship's windows, pretending to be wild pirates of the seas, sailing over large, stormy waves and catching great white sharks with their imaginary fishing rods. Henry shouted, "Hold on tight! Look ahead! There they are! Our enemies of the seas are trying to steal our ship! Let down the sails and off we go!" Kathleen and Henry ran upstairs, and Kathleen held on with all her might, while Henry let the sails down and started to steer the ship's wheel in every direction. They had to get away from the bad pirates. How excited Kathleen was! She rolled up her trouser legs, pushed her sleeves up her arms, and was all set to sail into the vast blue wide ocean. "Whoosh!" Kathleen shouted, mimicking the sound of waves. Henry laughed and then shouted, "We've lost them! Well done, Pirate Kathleen! You are the best girl pirate I've ever known." They laughed and cheered as they pretended to get away from the bad pirates. Getting away from the pirates was very hard work. Steering the ship, making all those sounds, all the pirate talk. They used up all their energy and both were quite exhausted from it all. Mum arrived at the ship and said, "Come on, you two, it's tea time. Come and have the delicious picnic we packed this morning." Kathleen and Henry both jumped off the ship into the sand and ran to where Mum was sitting watching them play. Mum had laid out a wonderful red and white checkered picnic blanket. On the picnic blanket sat plastic tubs bursting with crunchy carrot sticks and dips, cheese and cucumber sandwiches, some very tiny sausages, and freshly squeezed orange juice which Mum had prepared during the morning while Kathleen and Henry were still getting up. Juicy watermelon slices were arranged perfectly on a white plastic plate. Mum brought napkins for the children to wipe their mouths and long, curvy, luminous yellow straws to drink with just for fun. Mum always made the picnic basket full of tasty treats and snacks. She even brought the white chocolate mice she had been hiding from the children since Henry's last birthday party. She hoped they had not melted in their packaging in the hot sun. Kathleen and Henry were so pleased. "Thank you so much, Mum," giggled Kathleen. "We knew you'd kept these hidden away for us." A little squished and melted, but they still taste lovely. As soon as they had finished eating, Henry said, "Thank you very much, Mum, for the delicious picnic you made for us. It was so kind and thoughtful of you. We'd love to go and play again now, please." "Okay," said Mum, "just for a short while though, as we need to be heading back home soon, as it's getting a little late." "Of course, Mum," said Kathleen, running away. Henry ran behind her with his stick in his hand, again trying to tease Kathleen by tickling the backs of her legs. Mum just looked at both of them and laughed as she thought how funny Henry was, pretending to limp this time and having only a stick for a leg to hold him up. Of course, he still had his captain's stick for a hand arm hidden up his sleeve, and he started chasing Kathleen around and around the ship again, this time pulling very strange and funny, ugly pirate faces as he limped towards her. Kathleen screamed with laughter every time Henry caught her running around a corner. She almost bumped into him. How excellent Henry was at hiding and catching her. "Arr!" he would growl like a pirate each time Kathleen came close. "I am Captain Stick for a Hand. Arr!" Mom laughed and laughed. Kathleen laughed too as she ran and ran. Around and around they went until Henry finally got tired and started to slow down. But he could not find Kathleen. Where could she be? Henry decided that he was not going to be a pirate anymore and was going to look for Kathleen properly. No more nonsense playing. It was time to find her. Henry dropped the stick, walked properly through the sand, and went into the wooden playship looking for his sister. "Kathleen!" Henry called. "Where are you? I won't tease you any more, I promise, but I do not know where you are. It's not good to hide from me when we're being serious." He grinned nervously. Henry walked to one of the windows and peered out from the ship. And there Kathleen was, sitting with Mum on the picnic blanket. Phew, he thought to himself. Thank goodness she isn't lost. Mum and Kathleen saw Henry and started to laugh at him staring out through the wooden play ship's window. Henry smiled at them, but also looked a bit grumpy. He was about to walk over to them when, from out of the blue, came a boy of Henry's age. The boy asked Henry to play with him and his group of friends as they needed more people for their game. Hi, my name's Jack. We saw you behaving like a funny pirate, and we'd love for you to come and join our group. May I ask what your name is? We would all love to meet you. Hello, Jack. Very nice to meet you. My name's Henry. Thank you so much for coming over to ask me to play. How nice of you. It would be fun to come over and play with your group of friends. Would you mind if my sister Kathleen joined us as well? Henry said in an excited voice. Of course not, said Jack. The more, the merrier. Henry ran to Kathleen and explained to her what had just happened. Mum told the children to go and enjoy themselves and play for another hour before going home for dinner. Kathleen and Henry said, Thank you so much, Mum, and they ran off as fast as they could, kicking sand in the air as they raced each other. They both clambered up the ladder of the ship, racing to get to the other children first. When they arrived at the group on the top deck, all the other children were holding wooden swords in their hands. What is the magic password? Asked a little boy with very blonde hair and blue eyes standing near the entrance. Kathleen and Henry looked at each other in amusement. A password? We don't know it, said Henry, looking a little confused. Jack said in a loud voice, No need to worry about these two, as they are our fellow pirate friends. I've just met them, and they're really nice. The little boy with blonde hair and blue eyes just said, Okay. Kathleen and Henry were now part of a very important group of children who only accepted other children into the play area who were nice, kind, and polite. All 6 of the group smiled and welcomed Kathleen and Henry onto their big ship. They were all ready to set sail. With the 8 children in the group, the ship picked up speed and started to sail. Everyone wanted to be the captain of the ship, and big discussions took place about who was who and what their places were as pirates on their big pirate vessel. Kathleen decided to be the super fighting pirate maiden. Henry was the captain. Jack was one of the slaves they had captured on a deserted island. All the others were the ship's crew who had to wash the decks, prepare the food, light the cannons, and prepare for battle. Henry ran back to find his captain, stick for a hand stick, in the sand. Everyone now had their swords in their hands, ready to sail the 7 seas and defeat any bad pirates. Hurrah! Shiver me timbers! Shouted Jack, standing on the deck and preparing everyone for war. Prepare to sail! Shouted Henry in his deep, made-up captain stick-for-a-hand voice. Kathleen stood at the front of the ship, directing the navigation. The crew took out their oars to row out to sea. Whoosh! All the children rowed hard, pulling faces from the weight of the oars. The seas were going to be rough today. The wind was up, and the sails were ready to be let down by the captain's crews. A crow flew down from the sky, and Henry decided to make it his pet parrot. "Fly with us, you big old bird," shouted Henry in his deep voice. Henry steered the wheel of the ship while it sailed out into the deep and wide river Thames. Through London it went, under London's many bridges it sailed. It sailed past the London Eye, the Shard, and the Houses of Parliament, under London Bridge, and then, with a mighty creak, Tower Bridge opened its barriers for their ship to sail through. How gallant the ship looked with all of its beautiful sails! Off they sailed down the winding river Thames, and into the wide, deep ocean the wooden vessel cruised, faster and faster, until all but one of the sails had been let down by the maiden of the ship, Kathleen. As the wind caught the sails, Kathleen climbed back down onto the decking from the tall mast, trying not to topple over the edge as the waves of the ocean rocked the boat. Off she went to the front of the ship and pulled out her pretend telescope, made from rolled-up pieces of cardboard. She spied what looked like 3 tiny dots on the horizon, spaced very far apart. The wind caught the sails, and off the ship raced, faster and faster into the ocean. All the children's hair blew hard in the wind, and their clothes were thin. How they wished they had brought warm coats. "Look over there!" Kathleen shouted. "What is it?" Henry and Jack asked with excitement. "There are 3 ships on the horizon," shouted Kathleen as she pointed them out. "We have pirates trespassing in our waters. This is not allowed. Prepare for battle." All the others jumped up and fought to look through the telescope. Jack said, "You'll have to free me from my slavery if you'd like me to fight for your ship, Henry." Henry agreed to free Jack's hands, which he had tied up behind his back with one of his shoelaces. Jack got up and started to help the others with the preparations for battle. The others stopped rowing and lit the cannons. Henry started steering the ship towards the gigantic ships looming into view on the horizon. Everyone knew what they had to do to prepare to fight for their territory. "We will defeat every one of those pirates," said Henry. "Bring out the swords, cannons, and guns," Henry demanded of his crew. Jack laughed at the sight of Henry being the captain, as Henry had started to make his very funny captain stick-for-hand faces again to try and frighten the pirates off. Out came the cannons, which the crew then prepared. Jack ran to help Kathleen magnify the scene through the telescope. There was a slight fog in the air, which made the ships look hazy and not very easy to see from far away. The ships began to sail closer and closer. How monstrous these ships were, moving slowly and heavily through the fog. Never had any of the children seen ships so large and so great. 2 of the ships were still quite far away, but all the children looked up in amazement as the first ship's bow grew closer and closer. They were so tiny, like ants, compared to that big ship. Seagulls flew high above their tiny wooden ship, while flying fish jumped out from underneath them, and dolphins swam after them, leaping in and out of the water to catch fish in their mouths. "Turn on the ship's engines," shouted Henry. "We'll need to hurry before this large ship crushes us into the ocean." "Aye, aye, Captain," shouted Kathleen at the top of her voice. Jack prepared the engines with Kathleen and stood before them, hurrying the crew along. The engines finally started, and as fast as they could, they turned the Hyde Park ship around. "Hurry! Let down the last remaining sail." "Use the engine and let's sail away as fast as we can," shouted Jack in his strongest captain's voice. Kathleen, Jack, and the others all did what they needed to do. But as they were starting up the engines, suddenly the motor on one broke. Everyone tried to get it working again, but no one could do it in time. Each crew member had a go. As Kathleen and Jack started to fight over who was going to fix it, Henry decided enough was enough and told them both to behave themselves and not argue any more. With one hard pull of the engine's chain, Henry managed to start up the engine. By this time, the other ship was so close that no one thought they were going to be able to get away. Out of nowhere came a flying speedboat from behind the large ship, and the children knew they were not going to escape. "Look over there!" shouted one of the crew. "Oh no!" shouted another. Kathleen ran to Henry and jumped onto his back, hoping that he would look after her. Henry said, "Get down, Kathleen. Hide below deck. I'll deal with these bad pirates. Just you wait and see." Henry took out his stick for a hand sword and pushed it up in his sleeve. He started waving in the air, making sure the bad pirates who were coming for him would see it. All the other crew members and Jack were on guard. They had the cannons ready. They shoveled gunpowder into their guns, using sand from the sandpit, and they brought out their stick swords. Each of them daubed war paint on their faces from crayons they found on the decking of the ship, left behind by pirates who had been there before them. "Right, let's get ready to scare them off," Henry shouted. The bad pirates arrived despite the big waves crashing into their super-fast speedboat. As the children turned the Hyde Park boat, all the water from the waves gushed up onto the decking. Kathleen, Henry, Jack, and the crew were frightened, not knowing who the other people were. 4 strong sailors in sailor suits with brilliant white peaked hats spoke loudly. "Why are you in our waters?" "These are everyone's waters," Henry replied, "and we are not here to fight. We have seen how large your ship is, and we surrender." "Well, you are passing through Her Majesty the Queen's waters, so you must pay the price by abandoning your ship and then coming aboard ours." "We'll never do anything of the sort. We are not your slaves and will never be," Henry said loudly. "Then we shall come aboard your ship and we will take you to our queen by force," shouted one of the sailors. Kathleen, Henry, and Jack all looked at each other in shock. "What shall we do?" gasped Kathleen. "We need our ship to get back home, and we all need to go together. We can't leave everyone alone on the ship while we go up there." They decided it was best for them to all go. "Take us all," said Henry in his deep voice, pulling his ugly faces to try and frighten the sailors. With that, all the children were made to climb aboard the speedboat and abandon their ship. "We shall tow your ship behind ours until we're ready to release you," shouted one of the sailors. Off they sped on the motorboat towards a very long rope ladder leading up to the other ship's deck. This was the largest ship they had ever seen. As they clambered up the rope ladder, the captain sailor shouted out, "This ship is the HMH Belfast. It belongs to the Queen, and in no way will you disrespect the Queen when you meet her." The children's eyes were as wide as owl eyes. They truly could not believe how large this ship was. Held by their collars, the children were led by the sailors through some very narrow walkways and down narrow passages. They eventually reached a large room where before them sat the Queen, eating her dinner at a very large table. How beautiful she was, with her long dark hair tied back, her green eyes shining like emeralds, wearing clothes made of blue satin, and a sparkly crystal-encrusted tiara on her head, which dazzled so brightly it lit up her soft, gentle, kind face. Her lips were soft and full like rose petals, and her body was slim and lean. A white cotton shawl was draped over her shoulders to keep her warm. "Hello, children," said the Queen, smiling beautifully. "How did you arrive in my waters? Did you not know you were trespassing?" "I guess not, as you are just small children." She looked at them thoughtfully. "How about I forgive you for the mistake you made? Come and sit down and dine with me." The children were again taken by their collars and made to sit. "Go now," said the Queen in a strong voice to the sailors, who saluted the Queen and left the room. "Eat, children. You must be hungry. You've traveled far through London on the River Thames and into the big, wide, and scary ocean. You must be tired. You can sleep in my quarters when you are done. But for now, eat." She sipped on her tea and smiled at them as she looked over her teacup. No queen would look inside it when drinking, as this would, of course, have been considered bad manners. She held her saucer elegantly underneath her teacup as she drank her tea. The tea had come especially for her from China. This was a warm and fruity green tea, made only for her. It was the finest tea in the land. The great Emperor of China had given her the most beautiful China tea set as a birthday gift one year, as well as a special tea recipe. He had put all the ingredients together by his own hands for her enjoyment only. Henry, Kathleen, Jack, and the others sat and stared at the Queen. Her beauty was awe-inspiring, and they had never seen such good manners at the table. There she sat, sipping on her tea with her back straight, head up, and not slouching. Gosh, she must have practiced that move for years. As they all knew, manners don't just appear overnight. They really must be practiced every day of your life. The Queen showed her kindness as well as her good manners at the table. Slowly, the children started to take food with their fingers, which were grubbly from being on their ship. They ate one bite at a time, feeling a little strange as they had only just met the Queen. Kathleen whispered, "Henry, how are we going to escape?" "I'm not so sure, but I think I have a plan, Kathleen," Henry said quietly back to her. Jack and the others all looked at each other sideways, hoping to hear them or to see if they could get a glance at what Kathleen and Henry were talking about. Once the Queen had finished her tea, she said to the children, "Come now, Finish your treats and come this way." All the children stood up quickly and tucked their chairs in, trying to be on their best behavior around the Queen. They knew how lucky they were to be in her presence and to have the privilege of being allowed to follow her on this amazing ship. She opened a wide door. "Through here, off you go. Use the bathroom and clean yourselves up. You grubby little monkeys. I can't have you sleeping in my luxury cabin with all of that sand on your feet. And how on earth do you have sand on your feet, being all the way out in the ocean? Goodness!" With that, she closed the cabin door and left the children to wash themselves. "Phew, she's gone," Jack said quickly. "What shall we do now to try and escape?" Everyone turned and stared at Henry. "Okay, fine," said Henry. "I have an idea. Now listen to me. As you can see, there are porthole windows everywhere. Those round windows you can see. Let's turn off the lights so nobody can see us through the windows, and try to climb out of the one which looks the safest. Okay?" "Okay," they all quietly said at once. Kathleen tiptoed to turn the light off at the wall. Still so filthy and grubby, the others climbed onto the Queen's white satin bed. Their feet were so dirty. They all tried to peer out of one of the porthole windows, squashing each other's faces as they pushed and shoved to see what was out there. As they looked out, they saw two men standing guard. They turned to another porthole window and looked out to see if they were safe. Finally, "Yes, no guards around here. Let's creep out one by one," Henry whispered nervously. One by one, they all climbed out of the Queen's window and lay down on the deck so that the ship's rotating light would not catch them. They managed to secretly and quietly pull each other through the window, then tiptoed silently along the edge of the ship, managing to avoid all the guards. Out of nowhere, a firm-sounding woman's voice suddenly caught them all off guard. "Where are you going?" Oh no, the Queen had caught them. "Go back to bed, all of you. You are naughty for trying to escape HMS Belfast. No one has ever escaped this ship, not when I've been sailing on it anyway. Now, I do forgive you, and you need shelter tonight. There are many bad pirates out there, and they'll eat you alive if you don't do as I say. We are here to help you tonight. Tomorrow you can decide what you should do. Now go to bed at once, you grubby little mice, and go and get cleaned up as I have already told you." With that, 3 sailors took them gently, this time by the shoulders, and made the children go and clean themselves in the bathroom. They started laughing and joking with the children about trying to escape such a well-guarded Navy vessel with such skilled sailors on board to frighten enemies away. "Ha ha ha! You lot are sure brave to have come out this far, and then to try and escape us, especially when we are only trying to save your lives from what's out in these waters. You obviously don't have a clue, do you?" The sailors were ordered by the Queen to help the children clean up and tuck them into bed. The sailors made the children listen to their stories of the great wide oceans and how there were so many pirates on the open seas, just waiting to kill young children like them and to rob ships of their treasure. All the children stared with big eyes at the sailors. They could not believe all the stories they were hearing of magical myths and fairy tales, horrible pirates and evil mermaids who cast spells when no one could see them. The sailors told them how the mermaids liked to hide below the boat's stern and only come out at night, and how the crew always had to fight them off of the Queen's ship. The terrifying stories made the children tremble with fear and certainly not want to leave HMS Belfast at all now. The Queen walked back into her quarters and addressed the sailors. "Thank you, sailors. Now leave the children in peace." With that, the sailors saluted the Queen, smiled, turned, and left through the metal door. The children looked at the Queen in amazement. "Sleep now, children," she said as she made sure the windows were all locked before leaving the cabin, and telling the children to sleep on her bed. She went to another, much larger cabin right next door. 4 guards stood at the cabin doors, 2 at each door. These were the Queen's favorite and most trusted guards, and how big and tall they were! The children soon fell fast asleep. The sea was not calm, but unsteady, and the ship bobbed along with the big waves underneath it. The sailors, trained to stay up all night and guard the ship at all costs, stood still and performed their nighttime duties to look after everyone as they slept. It was late, and everyone was snoring loudly and deeply. Zzz, snore, zzz, snore. Between all of the children, the sound was like a collection of steam trains. One of the guards let out a quiet laugh. He thought it was very funny listening to the Queen snore. The guards heard a tap, tap, tap on the side of the ship. They knew that they had to chase away the beautiful mermaids from the front of the ship. The mermaids were teasing the guards. They enjoyed doing it every night, out deep in the ocean, teasing and making scratching noises on the metal of the ship as they swam with their long fish tails in the water. To trick the guards, the mermaids would all start giggling at once and playing their instruments. Tonight, there were only 4 mermaids. Often there were many more. One had a trumpet, the other a flute, the third a violin, and the last one had some castanets. They played a merry tune, laughing and joking at the sailors, smiling at them, and looking at them with their pretty eyes to make the sailors fall in love with them. The sailors thought it was fun, and this particular night they smiled and danced a little to the mermaid's happy tune. There were always other sailors on guard, making sure to shake any sailors who fell into the mermaid's trap. What the sailors did not know was that the mermaids were evil and only wanted to distract the sailors so they could too try and sink HMS Belfast. The mermaids were so jealous of the beautiful Queen and wished they could be human just like her. They wished they could be protected by all the handsome sailors of the ship. They knew they would never have the opportunity, but they all wanted to be queen and have the real queen drown in her sleep. The sailors would always say to the mermaids, "Jealousy is an ugly thing. The more jealous you are, the uglier you become." This was the truth because each night as the mermaids tried to become queen, and the more they tried to behave in a way which was nasty, unkind, or horrible, the uglier they began to look. The sailors were right. Fewer and fewer mermaids now swam towards HMS Belfast to try to capture the Queen, as it was starting to ruin their looks. And The sailors were beginning to not like who the mermaids were. It's important to just be who you are and be yourself in every way possible, the sailors always told them. Don't try and be something you are not, and don't try to trick us any more, shouted one of the sailors to the mermaids. You'll be far more beautiful that way, he said. As the mermaids were performing their musical show in the sea's wavy waters and being envious of the queen, a bright light appeared out of nowhere. The captain of HMS Belfast sounded the horn. Barp! Intruders! Look over there! Shouted a sailor. The captain called out, Bring up the anchor and prepare for battle. The queen awoke from her deep sleep as she knew the sound of her ship's horn, and she knew it meant they were in danger. The children, too, woke up immediately. Henry, what is it? Asked Kathleen as she looked up at Henry, who was staring through a porthole window. I think there are sea pirates, Kathleen, he told her. Everyone was trying to wake up fully when they heard a rapid footfall on the deck outside. All the children clambered to look through the portholes. The sailors were running and getting their guns and cannons ready. Are we going to battle? Cried Jack in a scared, loud voice. In the moonlight ahead of them sailed the biggest galleon any of them had ever seen. Not far from it was another ship. They were the two ships that everyone had seen through the telescope earlier that day, but which had been too far away to see properly. The silhouettes of the ships sailed closer and closer and got larger and larger. There was writing on the sides of the ships. One said Cutty Sark and the other Golden Hind. What a stunning sight! How grand these ships looked as they sailed closer. They were most definitely the largest wooden ships on the ocean for miles around, carrying pirates of the scariest kind imaginable. Most of them had snarling teeth and bad breath. As the ships drew closer, the captain of the Cutty Sark said in his big, deep voice, Lift the lids of the treasure chests. We're close to our enemies. Out from the black wooden treasure chests flew thousands of bats. Each bat was wearing a different hat made from diamonds and pearls and of all shapes, sizes, and colors. As the bats approached HMS Belfast, they attacked the sailors by dive-bombing them one by one and trying to bite the men's necks to attack them. The sailors of HMS Belfast fell to the deck, trying to evade the bats' dives. The bats tried to push the sailors over the edge of the ship and distract them from the ships, sailing closer and closer to their war vessel. Ugly, snarling pirates with large noses sailed closer and closer on the wooden ships. Meanwhile, the moon shone brightly, giving off enough light to fight a good battle. All the pirates were experts in acrobats, and each one flew from their decks onto HMS Belfast as their ships got closer. One even jumped straight from the crow's nest. They swung from ropes and shot cannonballs as close to HMS Belfast as they could. The mermaids played their music louder and louder to try and distract all of the sailors and the pirates. The children called and called to be let out of their room. The queen heard them shouting and arrived at their door. She asked the children if they were all right. Kathleen and Henry were very scared, and Jack and the others were waiting for the next pirate to show off his acrobatic moves by flinging themselves onto the deck. Out of their back pockets, the pirates pulled out enormous knives and forks, slicing the air and grinding them sharply together. The pirates were ready to attack again and again. "Have some manners," shouted Kathleen. "You don't even know how to hold a knife and fork," Henry shouted. "It's time for attack. I'm going in for the fight." "So are we," shouted all of the children. "Let's go and teach them some manners." They were all very happy to show the pirates how to hold a knife and fork correctly, and never to play with them as the bad pirates did. Why would they not take care of how they looked by holding their utensils as weapons in such an unpracticed way? "No, you will not be going anywhere. You will stay indoors until my sailors have conquered the pirates." "I do not want you to get hurt," said the Queen. She turned and left the cabin, shutting the door behind her with a slam, but forgetting to lock it. Henry peered around the corner to see that she had gone. The children ran out one by one, trying to make as little noise as possible, hushing each other every time they made a tiny noise. They tiptoed to the dining area. As quickly as they could, each of them grabbed a knife and fork and ran out onto the deck. "Right," said Henry. "Now we all have to hold our knives and forks correctly so that we can really use our fighting skills properly. This supersonic skill will help fight off these bad-mannered, noisy, pesky pirates. Look at them doing acrobatics all over our Queen's ship. Place your index fingers on the backs of your knife and fork. This way you'll have great control over what you are doing. Okay? Got it?" "Got it," they all whispered. The great battle carried on. All the pirates, sailors, and children were in a rip-roaring fight against each other. One by one, the children beat them with their amazing, highly skilled fighting moves. The pirates found it hard to take control because the children were using their knives and forks so well to fight them off. "What amazing techniques the children are using," said the Queen approvingly. This skill was a huge secret, and every pirate wanted to learn the strategy of how to hold a knife and fork correctly. The bats with the hats flew off quickly, knowing that they were being defeated by the children and the sailors. The Queen urged her sailors to keep fighting. Giving up, some of the pirates began to perform their acrobatic moves to escape HMS Belfast and get back onto the Golden Hind and Cutty Sark, falling into the water one by one with the children and sailors fighting them off. The wisest pirates used their acrobatic skills to jump back onto their ships so they could sail away as fast as they could. Mermaids swam from afar to gather up the pirates who fell into the water, keeping them as their slaves. The mermaids knew these pirates would want them, being as ugly and nasty as they were, blowing magic bubbles into the pirates' mouths to turn them into mermen. Off they swam to where they belonged, in the depths of the sea. "What are you doing on deck, all of you?" said the Queen in a worried voice. "I've been watching you fight. I told you to stay in your room." "We wanted to fight the battle and help you," exclaimed Kathleen. "Thank you for your kind actions, but we have survived these seas for long enough," said the Queen. "Teach us your skills and we shall release you tomorrow," she said in a strong tone. Excitedly, the children ran to the Queen and hugged her tightly, thanking her so much for agreeing to let them go. "Not until we have found out your magical fighting skills on how to hold your knife and fork correctly," said the Queen. "You may never use these skills on anyone again. This is the last and final time. You may teach us how to hold knives and forks correctly, but never again are those skills to be used off of HMS Belfast. It's very dangerous if you fight with them. You may only eat that way with them, using the correct holding position. Do I make myself clear, children?" The children all agreed and did their very best the next morning to teach the sailors and the Queen how to hold their knives and forks correctly, which would keep the bad pirates away. All the sailors thanked them. The Queen ordered the sailors to take the children back to their tiny ship, which had been trawling behind HMS Belfast overnight. As the children climbed back onto their ship, they waved goodbye to the Queen and all of her sailors. The Queen hailed her goodbye and waved in the correct manner of a true royal. Off they sailed back into the mouth of the River Thames, under all the marvelous bridges of London, once safely through Tower Bridge. With its barriers lifting again, their ship magically lifted off the river and soared high through the sky. The wind caught the sails and pushed them further, flying harder through the air towards their destination. With a whirl and whoosh, down they descended into the Kensington Gardens playground. Slowly and gently, they landed in the very large sandpit. Eeweek, crunch-a-woof. The crunching sound was the wooden ship landing softly. All the children smiled at each other and laughed at what an exciting and scaring adventure they had just been on. How brilliant they all were, landing their ship so safely. Mum looked at the children with great happiness and a large smile on her face. "Thank you, dear children. What a fun ride that was. I certainly felt so special to be the Queen in your game. Sailing on those seas wasn't very easy, was it? Come now, Kathleen and Henry, say goodbye to Jack and the others, as it's extremely late and bedtime very soon." So Henry and Kathleen said their goodbyes to Jack and the other children. "We hope to see you again in the park for another pirate ship adventure. Take care. See you soon," Kathleen and Henry said to them, laughing and giving each other one last pat on the back for being such fantastic sailors. They even said goodbye to the rest of the children in the playground and thanked them for being the bad pirates of the seas. How exciting it had been playing with everyone, and especially having Mum on board HMS Belfast. Now that was really fun. The end. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for Book 4 of the Henry and Kathleen series of children's books, Royal Air Force Day. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book.